Hi, this is Sean. So today I thought I'd make a video about Cartier, and I just wanted to make a general video about my 5 favourite models because I started doing that with other brands, and I thought, considering that Cartier is one of my favourite brands, I should do the 5 favourite models in their collection. But it's not really in their collection, it's kind of ever maybe not ever, but the ones that I like the most and I would buy and I would wear the most. So I bought this book, and it's basically like a history of the Cartier tank, obviously, as the name would suggest. And some of them have been inspired by this because a lot of people already know the history of the tank and the models that go along with that. But some of the images are really good, and it got me thinking about, you know, would I ever be able to afford a tank from the 60s or 50s when they were more rare and kind of more special, if you like, than the ones that are produced now. Because I did read that Cartier, for the first time, I think this year, surpassed Rolex as the biggest Swiss watchmaker, which means that by no means are they a small volume producer. You know, they produce a lot of watches and they sell a lot of watches. But I really do love the company, and I think reading this book and owning the Must, which obviously, you know, is not an amazingly special watch, makes me appreciate the brand even more and think, you know, they make really, really beautiful things, and in a way it's a shame that I can't afford more. Anyway, so yeah, so my top 5. So I'm looking down at my phone because I made a list on my phone, and this video is probably not going to be filled with any surprising revelations of my favorite Cartier watches, because they only make a relatively limited number of watches, and also I am nothing if not a conformist. No, I'm only kidding. So yeah, number 1, one of my favorites is the Tank Louis. So what I would be torn between if I could afford a Tank Louis would be buying a vintage Tank Louis and buying a current one. The vintage ones were probably more like rare, if you like, but it's always like nice to have a modern watch. You've got the warranty, you've got all that sort of stuff. But I would just buy the bog standard Tank Louis, 25mm, the large version, yellow gold, manual winding movement, and that is as close as any watch could come to being a perfect watch. It's a dress watch, it's not a sports watch, even though originally all wristwatches designed by Cartier were kind of sports watches because they were jewelry, but it was all about, you know, producing watches for the new age of people, because obviously before wristwatches it was pocket watches. But you could be proud to wear the Tank Louis. Anyone of any age could wear it. You could pass it on to your descendants, and it's perfectly designed. It's in the manual wind version, it's got a decent movement in it. It's expensive. The retail price for the new ones is about £11,000, which is expensive. I mean, it is yellow gold, but 11,000 is overpriced. I think you can get them more reasonably on the second-hand market, and I think you could get a vintage one for about 6,000. It does worry me that the kind of condition of the vintage ones, and, you know, with it being gold, will it be kind of polished and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, Tank Louis, can't go wrong really with the Tank Louis. Second is, and 3 of these are actually tank watches. Second is the Basculante. The Basculante, if you've never seen it, I'll put a picture of it up on the screen. They don't make it anymore, but they did make it until relatively recently. And the one that I would get is this. It's in steel, and it's got a manual wind movement. They've really crept up in price on the second-hand market. So, you know, you'd be looking at about £8,000, £9,000 for a version without papers and things like that. but I think it's because the design's so ingenious and because it's a funky watch. It's kind of Cartier's equivalent of the Reverso. I've been reading about it in this book a little bit, and basically that was one of the clients that these jewelers had. Sports people who wanted a case that could protect the watch. So obviously the Reverso flips over and protects the watch crystal. The Basculante, which was a little bit later than the Reverso, but apparently Cartier did have another design that predated the Reverso. Basically it flips on levers, and you can actually stand it up and use it as a desk clock, and it's just a beautiful object. And you know, it's a timeless design, and it's the same size as a Tanqueray, and you can mess about with it when you're bored. You know, it's a great watch. I love the Basculante, and it's a conversation piece, if you like, and it's, if anything, it's a little bit more conservative than the Tanqueray because it's not gold and it's not got the huge cabochon sticking out of the side. But yeah, my second choice. My third choice is the Americaine. So I think the Americaine was originally released in the 80s, basically to make the tank a little bit more masculine, I think, and a little bit kind of beefier. But having said that, I think I would get the medium version. And up until relatively recently, it was only made in precious metals, so obviously white gold and yellow gold and things like that. They released the steel version, so you can get an automatic Americaine in steel. But I think if I was in the market for one of these, I would try and get a precious metal one, because you could probably get one for not much more expensive than a new steel one. So I saw a couple of weeks ago, just came across an Americaine in a jeweler, and it was, I think it was 6,000 for a solid white gold medium Americaine with an automatic movement, which is really, really good. A good price. It sounds like a lot of money for a watch, £6,000, but it's solid white gold and it's an automatic movement, so you'd probably pay 15, 18 for that from Cartier, maybe 12, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. But I really like the Americaine, particularly the smaller ones. I couldn't wear a large version because it would be too big, and I think with rectangular watches, if they're too big, they look ridiculous. But the Americaine is a really nice watch. The only thing is, it's allegedly influenced by the Santre. I'll put a picture up on the screen, and the Santre will have had a manual wind movement. This is automatic, so the case back kind of bulges out, and some people don't like that because it looks like it looks a little bit ugly. But I don't mind it too much. I've tried an Americaine on, and it was really nice on the wrist, and it felt like a really nice watch, but I was just a little bit concerned that it was a little bit feminine. I'm not really bothered about those sorts of things, but personally I don't want to wear a watch that looks like a woman's watch. Yeah. So fourth choice is the Santos Galway. So the Santos Galway, again, another update of the Santos. I think it was also released in the 80s. It could have been the 70s. I love the kind of two-tone versions, and you can get an automatic and things like that. And I think I would prefer it to the current Santos, because the current Santos, you can't swap the straps and things like that because it's used as that Cartier system. And the sizing, I really like the small sizes in Cartier because they just look so much more sophisticated, and they're more in line, I think, with the spirit of the brand. And plus the Galway, you can pick it up a lot cheaper, even though it's another watch that's creeping up in value. But the Galway is kind of, I've heard people call it an old man's watch. It is a bit divisive because I think it does look, when you first see it, you might think that watch is ugly, but I come to appreciate it over time. Yeah. And fifth and final choice is the Santos Dumont. I'd probably try and go for an older one. The Santos Dumont was always the less sporty, if you like, version of the Santos. Obviously, the original Santos was the Santos Dumont because it was given to a man who was called, I can't remember his name, but he was called Dumont. He was an aviator. And these again were made in precious metals up until recently. Cartier released a Santos Dumont in steel, and there is a manual wind version, but it's much too big for me. I like the smaller versions, but I don't know, even though I've got a must with the quartz movement, I prefer the design of the traditional tank. It's not even the tank, it's a Dumont. But I didn't like that in quartz, really. I think it might be because a manual wind was more attainable in the price range. But yeah, you can get manual wind versions in white gold, for example. The only difficulty is finding a size that's appropriate for me, because as I said, I like the smaller sizes. Yeah, so that's my list of 5 Cartier watches, my 5 favourite Cartier watches. An honourable mention for 2 things, which is the Juste Clou, which is a Cartier design that I really love. I think it's really mega cool, and you can get a ring and a bracelet and things like that. And it's Juste Clou means just a nail, so its design mirrors the design of a nail, and that's something I think is really cool about Cartier, because now they cannot pretend to be this special jeweler of royalty company, because they're a massive company, and you know, when some people get some money, they just buy Cartier, but the designs really stand up to that. And I think it's a company that can be everything to anyone. So you see lots and lots of different types of people wearing the Juste Clou ring and bracelet, you know, from really rocky people who like rock music, to, you know, women, to men, to people of different ages, to people who are fashionable, to people who are not. And I appreciate that. And I'm not really a jewelry person, but I really like the design of some Cartier jewelry and really appreciate it in that way. And another one is, I won't get into the gender and watches discussion, because that's for another video, I guess, but one watch that I really love that's primarily for women is the Panthère. Put a picture up on the screen. I would totally wear the Panthère. It's a little bit small and it's a little bit feminine, if you like, but originally when the Panthère was released in the 80s, it was marketed for men and women, and you used to be able to get a bigger size in it, I think called the XL, that you can still get second hand. 2 men who actually wore the Panthère was Pierce Brosnan, if I remember correctly, and Keith Richards, and it looked good on them. And I think it's a really cool watch. And the Panthère only comes in quartz. You can get two-tone and steel and precious metals, but it's only quartz. But I really like the design of that, and that's a really, I always really like when I see a woman wearing a Panthère, because it just feels like a sophisticated watch to me, and I really like the design. Yep, so 2 honourable mentions there. So thanks for watching the video. If you like the channel, please subscribe and tell me your favourite Cartier watches down in the comments. Thanks very much. Bye bye.